This episode of the Athletic Football Show is brought to you by Kentucky Fried Chicken. That's finger licking good. Make everyone in the family happy with a 12-piece meal from KFC. Get all your favorites, like 12 pieces of their freshly prepared, world-famous chicken, 3 drums, 3 thighs, 3 breasts, 3 wings, 3 large sides of your choice, and 6 biscuits. Order now on the KFC app or at kfc.com.
This is the Athletic Football Show.
Welcome to the Athletic Football Show. I'm Robert Mays. Joining me today is my good friend Diante Lee. Diante, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing well, man. This is one of my favorite times of the season in the NFL. You know, the first few weeks, you kind of get that very immediate visceral reaction to the teams that are really good and the teams that are really, really bad. And then this time of year is where you get to like the teams with problems. Like, are you addressing those problems? Basically, do I need to take you serious, or are you just an unserious franchise from here on out? That's kind of what this time of year is for.
We're going to get into 3 games today that we did not hit on the Sunday night show with Nate. We're talking about Vikings-Saints. We're going to talk about the Jets side of the Jets-Steelers game a little bit more than we did yesterday. I said that we'd discuss Zach Wilson and his debut a little bit later after not getting to it last night. And then we're also talking about Titans-Colts, which we can get into when we get there, I guess. A lot of thoughts, a lot of things to say. So let's start with where the NFL Sunday started yesterday, and that is with the Vikings and the Saints. Minnesota manages to knock off an Andy Dalton-led Saints team 28-25. They go to 3-1 on the season. Saints are now sitting at 1-3. I was a little bit frustrated watching the Vikings in this game, but was my takeaway. That was my big picture kind of thought when I wrap this thing up, is that I just have this sinking feeling that I'm going to watch this offense all year and I'm going to be consistently wanting more. And it's for a few different reasons, but that was my prevailing emotion when I was done with this game. How did you feel after watching the Vikings win that game?
Similar to you, the very last note that I left that game with was, for all that, we're still talking about a 3-point win against the Saints.
Saints team like with Andy Dalton, with no Michael Thomas.
Yeah,
no Alvin Kamara,
and not a very good run game, you know, like for all of that. And I tried to look at it as optimistically as possible. And there were definitely some things to feel good about, but in the end, to have still been in a 1-possession game with a not good Saints offense on the other side, I definitely feel the exact same way that you do, that this is just going to be a weekly recurring thing for a team that's probably going to win 11 games or so. And I'm going to feel very disappointed almost every time I turn them on.
There were 2 kind of pillars of why I felt that way, in my opinion, after watching that game. 1, some blown opportunities. 3rd and 1, he has Munt wide open on a play action, a little slide down near the goal line. Ball was dropped. Thielen was also wide open on that play. Could have gone to either one of them. 4th and 1, from inside the 5, they kick a field goal, which was a little bit frustrating to me. And Kevin O'Connell, I think, had some pretty good 4th down decisions earlier in the season, so I thought that was a little bit surprising. Some weird clock management stuff near the end of the half. The ball with about 54 seconds left. Jefferson catches short little completion. They run off 30 seconds, even though they had 3 timeouts, end up having to kick a field goal there. And Jefferson also dirted Cousins dirts like a throw with a 4-man rush after the Jefferson completion. That was the other thing that I was frustrated by in this game. I shouldn't be at this point. I should know what Kirk Cousins is at this stage of my life. But when I watch him play, any bit of a crumbling pocket or anything that gets muddy or anything that changes with what is in front of him, and it's over. He cannot create anything. And that's okay when everything is perfect, because it can look pretty good. He looks good throwing the ball. It's aesthetically pleasing. He has a very good arm. But anytime something about that tends to deteriorate, he can't create anything on his own. And that is where there are a lot of places where this exists, but that is the biggest gap between him and the really, really good guys. And when I was watching that game yesterday, I was just so struck by the fact that he is not one of the really, really good quarterbacks, even if he's perfectly fine.
Yep. I mean, so I it's funny how aligned you are on this. Like, and I hate to say this, far be it for me to criticize somebody for their fear of contact, because God knows I'm not taking on any of these guys in the pocket. But I threw a question to some of my colleagues, and I was like, is there anybody who looks more afraid of being hit before contact comes at quarterback than Kirk Cousins? And I don't know who else you would put up there. That's something that stands out to me, especially against the Saints team that has bigger body guys that are pocket pushers, where you're going to be contacted. You might not always get
Yes.
lit up, but you are probably going to take some kind of glancing blow as you're delivering the football. And I think that kind of informs some of the ways that I was feeling about this passing offense in general, right? You open up week one with all the explosive offense to Justin Jefferson. Basically, they were doing what the Rams did with Matthew Stafford to open the year, right? And then you get a couple of new data points where you can't get the same kind of explosive offense. And then I'm watching this game and I'm like, okay, there's heavier personnel whenever you want to go outside zone. And then anytime you want to pass the ball, it's shotgun and condensed. Where in God's name have I seen this before? I was like, oh, O'Connell's running the Jared Goff offense for this guy now. I was like, now this makes so much sense. All of this makes so much more sense. And the funny thing with it is that I was actually kind of pleased because of how much it loosened up Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson. I thought there was a lot of great stuff designed to get them the ball on screens, on drags. And that first drive, I believe it was an opening drive. They got Jefferson out of the backfield on a choice route, little stuff like that. It's like, okay, I can see that you definitely made a concerted effort to try to find as many ways to get these guys back into rhythm early as possible. I thought there were good screens to their backs, Madison and the Cook. And then, like I said, with Thielen on those crossing routes and moving him around, I thought that all of that was pretty effective. But to the point of being dissatisfied, there's still just not enough explosiveness. And because there's not a big time explosiveness in the run game either, this leaves me just wanting more every time I watch this team leave the field on drives that don't end in scores.
Yeah, and we are very aligned on this because I had the same sort of set of notes early in the game. Jefferson in the backfield, really nice. Really, they had a beautiful idea. Just 2nd and 4, 5:08 left in the first quarter. They go empty out of 21 personnel. They have quads to one side, so a single receiver to the other side, and they run a little just a little crossing route for Thielen against a linebacker, just like pressing a lot of buttons that you want to see pressed in this game by design. A lot of just high lows with Jefferson and Thielen coming over the middle. A lot of guys that were running open in this game. The problem is when guys aren't running open, they're going to have no offense because he is never going to create something that isn't there. And so they're going to be successful. They're going to be efficient. I think they're going to be a pretty good team, but I'm just concerned about when anything starts to fade or diminish what that ends up looking like, because this offense isn't perfect. If it was perfect all the time, then it wouldn't end up mattering. But the offensive line still has questions to me, right? I mean, there were a bunch of moments in this game where the pocket is crumbling pretty quickly. The Ezra Cleveland had some pretty rough moments against Marcus Davenport in this game. The right guard, who is a rookie, hasn't had stretches of really clean play for the first 3 weeks of the season. There are going to be plenty of moments when he is going to have to make something happen when things aren't clean, and he just doesn't have an ability to do that. So I think there are going to be plenty of situations where guys are open because of the design of the offense, but when they're not, it's going to look really bad really fast, because that's what happens when Kirk Cousins is your quarterback. He can do a lot of things. He cannot create anything.
Yes, and it's funny, like watching that and hearing you kind of speak about this, because this is an experience I have with Kirk Cousins often, as I'm watching this offense and I'm like, what they need is a really just like a pure speed threat at receiver. And then I have to stop myself and I'm like, no. This offense doesn't get to have anything else. You don't need anything else with what you have. Like, no, I'm not doing this with this quarterback. I'm not doing this with this franchise. We don't need to add any more pieces. You have quite possibly the best wide receiver in the NFL, one of the best number 2s in the NFL behind him, and one of the better running backs in the league, and a guy that comes from one of the best brain trusts offensively that we have in the NFL too. There's nothing else I need to ask for. All of this, I think, falls on the shoulders of Kirk Cousins. And while I would like to see them move bodies a little bit better in the running game, this is kind of some of the things that I kind of felt that might come up. I feel like when we talked about them, this was something that I mentioned in the preseason, which is that kind of imbalance between what they do best in the run game, having heavier personnel with the last coaching regime, versus what you want to do being a more 11 personnel team. And they've had some things that are interesting, whether it's going empty in those larger personnel groupings, like you mentioned, or, trying to move guys around, whether it's Thielen or Osborne in motion to try to create a little bit of uncertainty with the defense. All that stuff is cool, but you still have to move bodies up front. And this is now multiple weeks in a row where, in spite of success rate, which I'm sure they're still not struggling in, I'm not seeing enough of them popping these big outside zone runs. I'm not seeing these counter runs that they're designing getting downhill the way that they should. And if you can't do that with a guy like Dalvin Cook in the backfield, well, then I have nobody else to turn to but this highly paid quarterback who's been here for multiple years now with a talented wide receiver core, and ask, what are you going to do about it? And I think that we probably know the answer, which is why this is just going to be a recurring, frustrating conversation to have with this offense.
It becomes an existential question, what you were just saying. It's so tempting to be like, well, if they had this one more thing, what would it look like? And you have to stop yourself. And you have to go back to the root of why this is the way that it is. And then you have to ask, what do you want to be? When we get to the end of this season, and this is a team that probably wins close to double-digit games, maybe makes the playoffs, ends up falling short in the playoffs. They're just good enough to finish 9th in offensive DVOA. And we're sitting there being like, man, it seems like the Vikings are kind of close. Like one or two things go differently. What could this end up being? And then you go around and around the whole thing again. And it's miserable and it's exhausting. And I just feel it coming again because it's exactly how good he is. He is exactly this good to bring you to this place. And if you're an NFL franchise,
like perfectly,
it's perfect. It is so, you're sitting there and you're looking at it and you're like, we are good enough or almost good enough. Everything goes right. We are good enough. And then you talk yourself into all of the things independently going right. And then one thing goes wrong. But then the next offseason is like, well, if that thing goes right and all of the other things go right again, then we're going to be fine. But they can never all go right.
They never go right.
Because it's always going to change. When one thing gets fixed and nothing's going to go wrong, to no fault of your own. It's just how team building works when you need everything to be ideal. And it's going to be a fascinating discussion. When we get toward the end of the year, when this season eventually ends, and you're sitting here thinking about what you want to be and where you want to go, and whether or not you want to commit to him again. He's under contract for next year, but there's some interesting levers in there that they can maybe get out of it. It's such a well-worn conversation and thought process with this organization, and it's absolutely exhausting.
9th,
couple of moments,
perfect.
9th, because it's 9th. They're 9th.
That's always just good enough to always be pissed off, right? Like it's always good enough to just be disappointed all the time while also not feeling rational enough to say blow the whole thing up, even though we know that this is always what it's going to be.
The interception to Matthew, is that to you, is that a horrible decision? Is that a nice play from Tyrann Mathieu? It looked to me like it was just cover 2 and Matthew's just sitting there, but he was playing a little bit first, should have been. Walk me through that decision and just how bad or good it was. How bad it was or how good of a play by the defense it was.
Right. So I kind of looked at it from both perspectives. Was this an awful ball or just a miscommunication offensively? Because of the way that Tyrann Mathieu played it, at first I was like, well, is this like a read cover 2? Like, they call it palms or 2 read or whatever the case, where it's quarters unless the slot receiver runs a quick out, right? And you can give a certain depth, where if this guy breaks out towards the flats or towards the sideline at a certain yard depth, our corner is going to go jump it and our safety is going to go over the top and play like a cover 2 safety. I think that the issue is that when you see that versus a fade route, most offenses ask you to convert it, to almost sitting in that hole between the safety and corner, right? So that way the wide receiver doesn't get lit up and the quarterback doesn't throw it so hard on the line that safety can break on a flat line the way that Matthew did to pick the ball off. So I think it was kind of both things working in tandem against the offense. Because the route was jumped so quickly, you can see Kirk immediately trigger on that go ball. And I think that because they were so tight to the boundary, now Tyrann Mathieu playing wider than he probably would have been in other situations. Maybe they had it scouted out. Maybe that was kind of an adjusted call based on the formation split, but you could see that there was absolutely no doubt in Matthew's mind, based on how flat of an angle he took, that fade ball was going to be thrown in a back shoulder type of situation, and he was able to get underneath it. So I think either way, we kind of have to put that one on the offense. You do give a little bit of credit to Matthew for being aggressive in that situation, but I think better communication or a better understanding by the receiver of the coverage shell he was getting, and that probably should have been a completion.
I want to go back and watch what the exact route combination was, but I want to say It's a similar design to the one he almost hit against
Mhm.
the Eagles, where
Yes.
he had Irv Smith deep and then just he dropped it. I think it was that exact same kind of out
Yes. Out and
vertical
fade. Yep.
combination. Yeah. So
Mhm.
if maybe there's something they saw in that where it's like, we're not going to let that hit us over the top. And so that's interesting. A little bit of defensive
Right.
coaching from the Saints. Speaking of, where are you at with the Saints? They almost won this game. They absolutely could have won this game. They turned a couple really unlucky bits of fumble luck. They had a really kind of, in my opinion, weak illegal hands to the face penalty on Matthew that kept that drive going, that allowed the Vikings to kick the go-ahead field goal. I mean, a couple different breaks in this game. The Saints with Andy Dalton, no Michael Thomas, no Alvin Kamara, potentially win this game. And I don't know if that says more about where the Saints are in terms of being competitive or our general dissatisfaction with the state of the Minnesota Vikings.
My again, reading directly off of my notes, it says Olave : good. Everything else ? Question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark. That's kind of where I'm at.
My last note literally says all the way in on Olave. That's what it says word
Yes.
for word. I am all the way in on Chris Olave.
I don't think I have much else. I don't know how much more I can give about this offense, honestly, looking at it. The running game has been struggling all year. Obviously going to be even worse without Alvin Kamara. I think handing the ball off to Mark Ingram in 2022 was quite an adventure. And it didn't go well, especially with that offensive
And
line.
Latavius Murray.
Yes, that is I have to check my calendar every once in a while when I look at the Saints backfield to make sure that I'm where I'm supposed to be. So they definitely have been struggling to run the football. I thought that one positive for them that I did see was in the second half, they definitely started pushing the ball more vertically. I think that the Vikings were trying to play a little bit tighter in coverage. You definitely saw better underneath coverage, distributing those routes, breaking on the ball a little bit quicker. And I liked Andy Dalton taking some of those chances on over routes, on some of that design stuff, trying to get him some deeper pockets so we could push the ball further down the field. And he was definitely able to connect with Olave a few times, and they were productive in the passing game. But what the hell else is there to this offense, man? Like, I don't know what I think. I still don't know what I think about this Vikings defense, so I don't have a real barometer to kind of gauge this game off of. And I don't know, like, every time I watch them, and I hate beating a dead horse with this, but it's like, this is what an offense looks like when the bill comes on all the spending that you've done over a 7, 8, 9, year period. It looks like the bill is due outside of Olave with all the guys that they have hurt right now, and what they probably were going to look like even being fully healthy. I don't know how you kind of wrestle this thing free from the mud that it's been in to open the season.
Saints are 1-3. We can go back and forth and
They're
try
a
to
bad football team.
rationalize a couple big breaks they could have gotten. Could their record be better? They're 1-3. The Packers and the Vikings are 3-1. Okay. So those are two teams that likely have an inside track to make the playoffs. One of them, the division, one of them, the wild card. The Eagles are undefeated and the Cowboys are 3-1. Again, a team that's 2 games ahead of them in a potential wild card race. We'll see what happens with the Rams and the Niners tonight. They're behind the 8 ball for making the playoffs in the NFC. And they pushed a lot of chips into the middle of the season, this offseason. They thought in a watered down conference, can we get there? It's a watered down conference. The answer is no. And what happens next becomes a pretty big, daunting question.
I hate poking the NFC South teams bare, because I know if this goes wrong, they'll never let me hear the end of it. But it is entirely possible that the Falcons end up being a better football team than the Saints by years.
Wow.
Certainly will be more exciting offensively. I think that is within. I completely believe that is within the realm of possibility. And I will certainly say, from a watchability, if we're going by watchability index, I would have much rather every single Sunday watch the Falcons do whatever the hell it is that they're doing offensively than to ever watch this Saints offense again.
I think that's more than fair. I also think that over a 17-game stretch, the Falcons defense is going to be so incredibly bad that these teams probably end up close to each other. But on a watchability level, I totally agree. I think the Saints defense is going to be the Saints defense. I don't think the heights are going to be as high as they've been over the last couple of years, but I think they're going to be very good. You see it. You see flashes from Cam Jordan had a couple really nice moments against Brian O'Neill in this game. Marcus Davenport is bullying people when put in defined pass rushing situations. I think Warner's a really nice player. He had a couple moments in this game where I'm just
Yeah.
like, it's a play a linebacker just doesn't typically make. They try to run that little vertical rail to the fullback off play action. He read it the entire way. They just had a lot of nice pieces, and I just think that's probably what they're going to be. They're going to be a team that finishes like 6th or 7th in defensive efficiency because they have really good pieces and pretty good coaching, and their offense is going to be frustrating, and they're going to be a team that wins like 6 or 7 games, and we're going to be wondering what all of this was for.
Yep. Remember, guys, this was a team that could have done things much, much differently in the offseason. They chose this. Okay. This did not happen to them. They picked this. Okay. When we do our postmortems, remember that this was decided upon.
One more note I wanted to hit on before we let Lewis Seen broke his leg in this game, so he is going to be out for the season, which is a big bummer. Obviously, Andrew Booth has been hurt for most of the year. You know, we're getting snaps from guys I've never even heard of at corner for the Vikings right now. They do not have a lot of depth. I mean, the one Marquez Callaway had a one-on-one against a guy whose name I literally have never heard before in my life. His number 21, and that is how I'm going to remember him in this moment and moving forward. And Dantzler is that's all I got, man. There are 32 teams. There's 16 games a weekend.
Madden generated names.
That's all I got. So it's a bummer because when you're watching those Patrick Peterson had like a couple nice moments in this game, but for the most part, I think that you draft a corner in the first round because you understand the writing is on the wall with Patrick Peterson. If they have Cam Bynum is also to me a Madden generated player who is there to be replaced eventually. I think that was the idea with Lewis Seen, and so I'm with you. I just don't know what the defense is or what it is going to be. I think that they didn't get a ton of pressure in this game, a couple nice little splash moments, but not consistent. And the jury's still out for me. I give a couple more games. We'll see what they actually are against teams that aren't quarterbacked by Andy Dalton, and they didn't jump on the Packers in week 1. I still don't know exactly what I think about this defense.
I'm right there with you. Like the one thing I was happy with was just what they were doing in underneath coverage in the first half. Everything other than that, I'm like, I got to see it against a real team first.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be back with Jets Steelers.
What's the first thing you do when you wake up? Is it checking on your credit score? Didn't think so. At Chime, that's exactly what they do. With their secured Chime Credit Builder Visa credit card, you can start to build credit with your own money. Chime reports your payments to credit bureaus to help you build credit over time. Their members see an increase of 30 points on average. All of this with no annual fees, large security deposits, or credit checks to apply. So start your credit journey with Chime. Sign up takes only 2 minutes and doesn't affect your credit score. Get started at chime.com/maze. That's chime.com/maze. The Chime Credit Builder Visa credit card is issued by Stride Bank N.A. pursuant to a license from Visa USA. Chime checking account and $200 qualifying direct deposit required to apply for the secured Chime Credit Builder Visa credit card. Regular on-time payment history can have a positive impact on your credit score. Impact to score may vary, and some user scores may not improve. Out-of-network ATM withdrawal fees may apply except at MoneyPass ATMs in a 7-Eleven or any Allpoint or Visa Plus Alliance ATM.
The conversation around mental health in sports has never been more productive than it is right now, whether it's athletes taking time off, getting in peak mental shape, just getting themselves mentally prepared and ready to go. More athletes are speaking out about the importance of mental health, but you don't have to be a pro to want to be at the top of your game. Everyone needs to take care of their mental well-being, whether you're an athlete or not, and therapy is the best way to keep yourself in mental shape. I'm a huge proponent of weekly therapy. I've been going for a long time. It's a great way to check in with yourself, perform some maintenance on where you are and where you want to go. If you're thinking of giving therapy a try, BetterHelp is a great option. It's convenient, accessible, affordable, and entirely online. Get matched with a therapist after filling out a brief survey and switch therapists anytime. When you're ready to feel at the top of your mental health game, therapy can help get you there. Visit BetterHelp.com/maze today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp.com/MAYS.
I am hungover.
All right. Jets beat the Steelers 24-20 in a game where Kenny Pickett makes his NFL debut. I want to start on the other side of the ball, though. Impressions of Zach Wilson in his first game of the season. What do you got for me?
The best backhanded compliment that I can give, which is that this is probably the best multi-turnover game that he's had in his young career so far. Because neither of those turnovers were really on him. You know, I won't put those directly on him. You know, the one that was through his receiver's hands and picked off by Minka, you know, what can you do? about that. So in terms of actually making throws, I thought this was one of the better games that we've had. He was relatively on time coming over the middle of the field. He still has to work on being very late up the sideline, had some drop picks up the sideline. Steelers missed some opportunities to make him pay. And he's obviously still got to work on his pocket navigation. The pirouette throwaway, that'll end up on a blooper reel of some sort at the end of the year. You still have some issues with bailing out of the back end of the pocket, turning a 5-step drop into a 13-step drop, trying to get away from pressure. Still not always positioning himself in a way where he can take full advantage of what I think Michael Floor is trying to draw up for him. But for the most part, if we're looking at the quality of throws, for the most part, especially in comparison to where he was early last season, I think that you can see a little bit of the dream that the Jets are trying to sell us on what Zach Wilson might be.
Yeah, the pocket navigation stuff I think is definitely something to point out. The one play specifically where he eventually throws an incompletion to Corey Davis on the right sideline, he dropped to 15 yards before trying to throw that ball. I mean, sprinting out of the back of the pocket. And that happened a couple times in this game, and that's something that's going to have to improve. Pass protection, something to mention as it relates to that. The Jets tackle situation is an absolute mess.
Exactly.
And
yes.
I actually thought those guys played okay yesterday. Their offensive game plan and performance could have looked a lot worse when you consider one of their starting guards was playing left tackle. They had a rookie, I believe, 4th-round pick starting the game at right tackle. He gets hurt. Connor McDermott comes in. They were helping AVT on the left side more than they were helping on the right because it's hard to chip 2 guys on every single play. So the right tackle was left on an island a lot in this game. And eventually you're going to get beat. Mitchell had a couple rough reps against Highsmith. He had one against Reed. That happens. He's a rookie 4th-round pick playing against NFL players. That's going to go down. So I think all things considered, based on the state of their offensive line coming into this game and what it looked like by the end, the performance from that group was okay. My biggest concern with Wilson is he was abysmal against man coverage last season. Horrible. Dead last in the league in pretty much every single metric. He was not good yesterday. 7 of 16 for 102 yards and 2 picks against man coverage in this game. And that does not include a play that was negated for a defensive hold when he tried to decapitate Michael Carter up the right sideline.
Yes.
And it just seems like any time he's not throwing the ball into open space on plays that are designed up for him, often over the middle of the field, when they have high lows for him against zone coverage, it looks beautiful. He's really good at placing the ball to that area of the field. You can understand how you can talk yourself into this guy. But when he has to think about it for a second, he had one big time completion to Garrett Wilson in a key moment against man coverage. That was a really nice moment. Other than that, he's holding the ball for 3 seconds. A lot of indecision, just not willing to pull the trigger when there is any sort of color that he has to navigate mentally. And that is still a concern to me.
No, I'm 100% with you, right? So when I think about specific examples of the good, you think about that deep comeback to Elijah Moore up the right sideline, if I remember correctly, where he gets to pat the ball, climb the pocket, everything's on time. There's no pressure that he's dealing with. He's able to drill those throws, right? And if you're the Jets coaching staff, you're looking at that like, okay, we probably weren't getting very much of that, if at all, last season. That is at least a sign that when he navigates the pocket properly, his eyes and his feet and his arm are all married together, and he's able to deliver the ball well. And then you think about the throw to Garrett Wilson, on a late outbreaker. Number one, he gets to it in aggression really late. He throws the ball late and inside, and that should have been picked. And then you're looking at that and you're like, still with this. And you're watching him go through some of these progressions where there's a lot of stuff underneath. This should be quick 1 to 2 to check down, or 1 to check down if you don't like your first look. And you can just see him just perseverating on these throws, right? And it looks very much like getting the call and thinking, oh, this is a smash concept. I really want to throw the corner here. And now you see him staring at the corner for an extra beat before he works off of it. Against a team like the Steelers that's perfectly comfortable and probably prefers to play a lot of cover one with guys like Minkah Fitzpatrick as a robber, that's how you end up in these disaster pocket navigation situations where it's my first look is not there because there's tight coverage. And now everything else after this is 100% on me and my arm and my understanding of my offense against the coverage look that I'm getting or the blitz look that I'm getting. And that's where you get the 15-yard dropbacks. That's where you get him turning his back on the pass rush, which is just like a cardinal sin that I don't understand how you coach out of a quarterback. Guys who turn their back on pass rush to try to escape typically never let that go and usually have many bad things happen to them. So I'm still seeing things like that draw a lot of my ire, and watching him try to navigate the pocket as a quarterback and still be on time. And everything that's against like regular zone coverage is like, okay, I can see the arm strength. I can see that you can step up and deliver these dig routes. I can see that you can hit these throws up the sideline when everything is perfect for you. And that's nice and great and all is well with that. But that's not the real NFL. That's not the real NFL where you get all the time in the world and you can work perfectly through your progression and you get 12 yards of separation to throw the ball into across the middle of the field. You've got to deal with defenses that are more like what he saw in that disaster game against the Patriots last year, where it's cover one the entire way, or it's going to be cover two and we'll force you to throw the ball in the middle of the field and you got to deal with the crushed pocket. That's going to be much closer to the reality. So while I definitely saw some things that I can feel like, all right, we can check off the fact that some work has been done in this way. I feel the same way that you did, that the things that were issues last year and led to some of the worst snaps that we saw of him last year still exists and still has to be addressed in this offense.
He's going to play against teams with a better pass rush than the current state of the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yes.
That is going to happen. And the tackles are not going to get healthier anytime soon. It's going to be multi-week stuff for some of these guys. The Max Mitchell injury, I don't think is season ending, but we got multiple guys on IR on the left side. I mean, they have issues, and those issues aren't going to get fixed very quickly. And he's going to play against a team with dominant edge rushers, not one or two snaps from Alex Highsmith and Malik Reed over the course of the game. And so this stuff about navigating the pocket, feeling comfortable, understanding what to do when that space starts to condense and having some sort of composure when those moments, that's going to become more of an issue against teams that are not this version of the Steelers.
To your point of he's going to deal with real pass rush, where they see the next 6 games? You want to know the sequence of football that Zach Wilson's going to be dealing with?
I really do. I really do.
Miami, Green Bay, Denver, New England, Buffalo, and then New England again. Those are the next 6 weeks of just football. So if you think it's fixed, we'll find out. We'll know about 2 games into this, whether or not some of these issues are fixed, because not only can all of these teams get after the quarterback at least a decent bit, every single one of these teams that I named believe in playing tight coverage as often as they possibly can. Even a Bills team that plays a lot of too high zone, they are very aggressive in theirs. The Broncos have a real cornerback one. The Packers have a real cornerback one. The Dolphins believe in cover one and blitzing the hell out of you all the time. And the Patriots are the Patriots, and you got to see them twice. So, for all the things that I saw today or yesterday that had me thinking like, all right, I can say thumbs up in general if I'm using last year as my reference point and not just evaluating him as just like a blank slate quarterback on a rookie deal. A little better now, but what he's going to see over the next month and a half is probably not going to be very pleasant if he's still dealing with some of these issues.
What do you think about just like the overall design of the Jets offense and where they're placing players in some of these opportunities?
I love having Garrett Wilson there available to them as a wide receiver. Makes me like this offense a whole lot more from a design perspective. We talked about it a bit when they played the Browns, and we got to see Garrett Wilson really get moved around, working underneath and vertically. He was able to threaten every level of the defense. I think that he and Moore pair really well together as a wide receiver pairing. So I'm very interested to see how these guys kind of mature with one another. And I like the running back room. I think that what LaFleur has from the skill position perspective is enough to think like, all right, a real true star either at quarterback or, a top flight offensive line could really make this thing go in a way that it's not right now, because I can certainly see the outlines of it. But right now with what they have at signal caller and all the injuries that they're dealing with on the offensive line, it does leave, I think, or it does expose a lot of the holes that they kind of have in staying efficient on first down. I think that at one point their first down average yards per play was around 1, because they just don't have enough up front and they're not getting enough on early downs to be able to keep them ahead of the sticks. So that way LaFleur can do some of the best stuff for some of the stuff that we saw in the second half against Cleveland this year.
I want to watch all 22 of this game at some point just to see like some of
Same.
the route distribution stuff. This is one of those games that I watched early this morning before it was available. Just watch the TV copy and curious what he's looking at and where where some of these decisions are coming from. And when he's holding the ball against man coverage, what does the back end look like? I'm interested in them. The pieces and the way they fit together. I like the skill position talent. Even having Corey Davis is, I guess, nominally your number 3 receiver, even though he's the highest paid guy on the team at that position. That's a really nice piece. Like they have talent on their offense, and I do think they're doing some interesting stuff. So we'll see what happens over that 6-game stretch that you mentioned. Going to the other side of the ball in that other offense, I'm trying to figure out how I want to say this.
Are you finished with Matt Canada too? Can I pose it to you that way?
I'm trying to think if this is the worst offensive infrastructure in the league, but the Panthers exist. Okay, so
yes,
but it is not that far away from what the Panthers have been over the last couple of years when you think about the overall plan and how little sense it makes. Okay, you bring in Matt Canada to be your quarterback coach, and then he's now your offensive coordinator because of reasons, and then you keep him when Ben Roethlisberger retires, because I guess you can talk yourself into the fact that your offense was unwatchable last year because Ben Roethlisberger was near the end. But what their plan has been for who's calling the offense, who's blocking up front, their offensive line is borderline unwatchable. They're playing against the Jets team that hasn't exactly been tearing people apart. And the tackle play is this is the right tackle they've committed to. And the tackle play is actively bad. And I just don't understand any of it. Jermaine Johnson's just roasting dudes, and that has not shown up over the first 3 games of this season. So I'm sitting there like, they can't block anybody. I'm not in love with anything they do design-wise. And the quarterback play, whatever it's going to be, is almost independent of that. It almost doesn't matter. Where this quarterback play ends up and who ends up playing quarterback and what Kenny Pickett is almost inconsequential from the things that frustrate me about the offense. When they pulled Trubisky at halftime, I was like, this is when you're going to do this? What about the last 2 quarters of football was so egregious compared to what had happened over the previous 3 games that we decided this needed to happen right now in the middle of a game before you're about to go on this murderer's fucking row against 4 of arguably the best defenses in the entire league over the next month? I just don't understand the short-term plan for why the offense looks this way and what the long-term plan for why the offense had to look this way over the last couple of years. And Mike Tomlin, for the most part, when you look at the offensive coordinators he's had over the last 15 years, these are guys with skins on the wall early on. Bruce Arians, first one that he had. Then he goes to Todd Haley, who's another former head coach. And then you get into the Randy Fichtner era, which only exists because you're trying to create some continuity with Ben Roethlisberger, which I can understand that as an argument. But this current iteration for the ecosystem that the Steelers have tried to build themselves on offense, I truly do not understand it.
I'm so glad that you lined it up this way. And I think a lot of this kind of crescendos with the quarterback change at halftime. Like I was watching Red Zone for a good bit of the morning slate for me. And then it flashed to this Jets Steelers game. And I saw Kenny Pickett. And I was like, did I miss something? Like, did Trubisky like die in the locker room or something? Like what did I miss? Because I didn't see anything in the first 2 quarters that was any different than what we saw for the first month of the season. And certainly
I'd say he made some better throws in the first 2 quarters than he had made at any point in the season.
And I think that some of the sacks that he took were like Trubisky sacks. 3-man rush, hold the ball forever. I've been watching that since he got drafted. So there was nothing that was kind of blowing me away from that perspective. To that point of what is the decision making behind that, a lot of that is reflected on the field as well, between personnel and how they're kind of implementing guys. And a lot of this kind of brings me back to what the hell is Matt Canada with this offense? So what was he brought in for? It was all of the misdirection, right? Well, we don't even really get jet sweep from this guy anymore. That's not a part of this offense, really. That's not how they employ their receivers. It was all the different personnel packages that they can use. Well, none of that shit matters if your offensive line can't block anybody. All you become is a very tendency-oriented offense. This is something that Nate Tice has spoken about with you on this show before I was even working here with Matt Canada. So this is not breaking any news with him on that end. And then you look at what they're doing in the passing game, and I think I got to like maybe 6 or 7 obvious pass situations in a row. And a note that I left was, do we not have anything better on this call sheet than mesh? Because I felt like I was just watching mesh on a continuous loop every single time they had to pass the football when Trubisky was in the game. And then to put Pickett in and say, hey, now we're going to do all this like play action, move the pocket. I want you to take some shots vertically. I'm like, all right, well, why are we dropping our rookie quarterback who clearly did not have enough belief from the staff to start the season with? And now you're asking him to take his shots down the field. So I don't know exactly what the vision is even supposed to be. If somebody took a blind test and I just gave them a sequence of plays or what was attempted on these plays based on personnel and formation and the way that things were supposed to go, I don't think that anybody could tell me, even the better football minds, what this offense is actually looking to accomplish. And I feel like this is maybe the third hangover in a row where we've had at least one offense that kind of falls underneath this kind of denomination.
For years and years and years, you have a veteran, expensive quarterback, and it hamstrings the way that you can build your team.
Yep.
Even when he was good, it prevents you from making moves other places, and you have to skimp in some areas of your roster. This is the plan when the quarterbacks cost nothing. This is it.
Yep.
They had a bunch of free agent money to potentially rebuild their offensive line. We came away with Mason Cole, James Daniels, and a contract extension for Chukwueze Okorafor. That's what we had. You have your left tackle plan with your second year guy that wasn't very good as a rookie and still wasn't playing very well. I just look at the entire offense and the fact that they kind of had a chance to retool this thing a little bit this offseason. They could have had any offensive coordinator that they wanted, maybe whoever wanted to be there, but they could have gone out and done anything.
Right.
They could have remade their offensive line. They could have changed who was calling plays. And this is the plan they went with. And I'm like, this is it. Like, this is the infrastructure we're trying to build here for a rookie quarterback that you drafted in the first round when you actually had some resources to potentially do some stuff around him. That plan for what Kenny Pickett is going to be and for what this offense is right now, it's pretty bewildering. I just don't understand any aspect of it. Mike Tomlin has won a lot more football games than me. He's been very good at this for a very long time, but I just do not understand every single aspect of what they've tried to be on this side of the ball over the last couple of years. The receivers are good. Like, the receivers, think they're good players.
Yeah. Love Johnson. Love Claypool. I think that Pickens is going to be very, very like Fryer Moose too. Like, they have a nice collection of talent at receiver. And I think that the best version of Pickett, extending plays or, trying to dump the ball off after getting away from pressure, when he plays like that, you can definitely see like, okay, Kenny Pickett might be something that I can feel decently about, but the ceiling on how good I can feel about him is always going to be tethered to this offensive infrastructure. And nothing about the way that this is built right now is conducive to developing a quarterback. If we have to draw up power rankings of, hey, if every team right now lost their starter, which one is in the best situation to be able to manage it or get through it or bring in a rookie, this team will be towards the bottom. Like you said, the Panthers exist, so I can't say they're 32nd, but far be it for me to say that they're not in the 30s. This is not a pretty situation for a team that, again, to this point, has one of the better running backs in the league, I think, in Najee Harris, who I just feel so awful for every time they hand the football to. It's not a fun picture watching this guy try to bounce everything outside because he just has no trust on what's happening between the tackles. And then you can't protect long enough to get the ball to these talented receivers either. I don't get why with that 21st pick or where they picked that in the first round and all the money that they had this offseason, that these are the choices that they made if this is the offense that you're going to get. And I don't have a roadmap based on what we've seen so far to make me think it's going to get better, right? I can look at the Vikings, the team that we just covered earlier, and say like, okay, I've seen the Jared Goff offense. This can work. It might not be pretty. Like, it's not going to be 2018 Goff, but 2019 and 2020 Goff was good enough to win some games. I can kind of turn my head to the Vikings and Kirk Cousins and say, all right, I feel like I can trust, at least I'll know what that brand of football looks like. This brand of football does not win games, whatever it is that we're going to call it. And like you said, there's a murderer's row coming. The bottom can fall out on this thing in the next month's time.
And they're 1-3.
And
the bottom can still fall out of it.
Yes, they're already 1-3.
The Kenny Pickett takeaways, bad decisions on both of those throws. Like, I don't know what else to say about it. The third interception came out of Hail Mary. Who gives a shit? Obviously a tip ball on the one to Freiermuth on the sideline. That ball should never be thrown. Like, I don't just never should never be thrown. And that's fine. It's his first half when he did not get to prepare as the starter, which again, great stuff. That ball should never be thrown. And the one he's taking a deep shot on, first
double
throw,
coverage, man. You should probably let
I
appreciate taking a shot. Yeah,
it's a bad decision. There's nothing else to say about it. But I thought that he made some nice decisions. I thought he had some nice moments, and we'll see what happens. But it's hard to get that excited about Kenny Pickett when you're sitting here thinking about what they have around him and the people who are tasked with lifting him up in these situations.
I cannot believe that we are calling the Steelers a bad football team right now, but I think that this might be a bad football team.
It's hard to be a good football team in 2022 when your offense gives you very few chances to succeed.
Yep.
When the people in charge of building your offense inherently put you in a disadvantage, it doesn't matter what Mike Tomlin has accomplished or what sort of pieces you have on defense. And when you lose one of those pieces on defense, it's a huge building block that you've taken out of this. So we're running out of reasons why they should be a good football team as currently constructed.
This goes back to the infrastructure point that you make with franchises all the time, which is it's never a matter of the stars. It's what happens when you inevitably lose one of them. Do you have enough when you don't have that guy, or when that guy can't raise you up? In this franchise for the last, you can probably say 3 or 4 seasons, has not been in a position to sustain themselves if they don't have a Minkah Fitzpatrick, if you don't have a TJ Watt as a hero, if Ben Roethlisberger arms atrophies the way that it did over the last couple of seasons. When those things are not available to you, there's just not been anything here for us to feel good about, or for us to say that would be enough to get them through some of the issues that they're having.
All right, we're going to take one more quick break, and then we are regrettably going to wrap this thing up with Titans-Colts. Style isn't like math. There isn't one correct answer for everyone. It's all about finding what's right for you. Finding the perfect suit is impossible, but finding a suit that's perfect for you is simple thanks to Indochino. Choose your favorite fabric and customize every detail to find the look that's perfect for you. Submit your measurements online or get measured in-store for a custom, made-for-you fit at an incredible price. And with their fall collection featuring new colors and premium fabrics, you'll be in style all season long. I have multiple Indochino suits that I've worn over the years to every event you can imagine. Weddings, parties. I love how fit it is to me, and I don't have to worry about getting it altered or changed. I bought a suit off the rack recently, and getting it altered cost a couple $100. It was such an ordeal. With Indochino, you never have to worry about it. Everything fits perfectly and is made to your exact specifications. You can get a premium personalized wardrobe without spending a fortune. Shop custom-fitted shirts, casual wear, outerwear, and more. They're always adding new designs and fabric options, like their latest fall collection. Design your perfect suit with Indochino. To get $50 off any purchase of $3.99 or more, use promo code MAYS at Indochino.com. That's INDOCHINO.com, promo code MAYS. With Masterclass, you can learn from some of the world's best minds anytime, anywhere, and at your own pace. You can learn cooking techniques from Gordon Ramsay, barbecue skills from Aaron Franklin, or filmmaking production from James Cameron. With over 150 classes from a range of world-class instructors, that thing you've always wanted to do is closer than you think. I've taken a lot of the cooking classes, including the ones with Thomas Keller, and they've just made cooking a more enriching experience for me. When I have the basic skills down, understanding how knife skills work or how to make sauces, it makes the entire process more enjoyable. I find myself wanting to cook more than I ever have before. I highly recommend you check it out. Get unlimited access to every class, and as an Athletic Football Show listener, you get 15% off an annual membership. Go to masterclass.com/firstdown now. That's masterclass.com/firstdown for 15% off Masterclass. Reserve Bar is your online source for premium and luxury spirits, wine, and champagne. And now Reserve Bar offers same-day delivery. Reserve Bar has a vast lineup of rare and hard-to-find bottles, premium brands, celebrity spirits, and limited releases that you just won't find at your local store. No one does spirits gifting better than Reserve Bar. Looking for an elevated gift? ReserveBar.com has you covered, and you can have that gift delivered right to your door.
The hot trend in spirits is ready-to-go cocktails. Have you tried these? They taste better than ever, and Reserve Bar now has a huge collection of them. These canned cocktails are great for parties when you don't have time to tend the bar, and ideal for tailgating season, which is already in full swing. Visit reservebar.com today and use promo code Mays to save $10 off your purchase of $75 or more on spirits, wine, or pre-made cocktails, but only when you use our special offer at reservebar.com with code Mays. That's reservebar.com, code MAYS. This offer expires December 31st, 2022.
Here's the deal. I've got a hangover. Who knows what that means?
All right. So the Colts are in a timeout for me right now. And I almost wish that we didn't have to do this, but if we didn't do it, then I would be slighting Titans fans who already think I hate the Titans. This is the shit that I have to think about when we're trying to program the games that we talk about on this goddamn show. So I'm wondering, what do you think about the way that the Colts played yesterday and where the Colts are at right now? I'm going to let you take a majority of this and kind of run with it.
My first thought is just like, it is so hard to look away from how bad that offensive line looks sometimes. Like it makes it really, really difficult to evaluate anything else happening with this offense. And this is an offense, mind you, that has not gotten the best out of Jonathan Taylor and has definitely seen a Matt Ryan that has not been producing up to the level that I think that all of us optimistically thought that might exist with him. So it's just been so difficult to look away from what this offensive line has struggled with. And Tennessee doesn't have their best pass rusher to start with, or the best edge rusher, I should say, to start with. They are 100% just doing pocket push stuff, trying to feign some pressure and drop guys out. Very typical stuff, right? We're not getting the most imaginative version of this Titans defense, not even to the degree that we saw from them last year when I thought that they were doing a lot of really interesting things. And the Colts are still struggling, and one of the notes that I left, and I think this applies to both teams really, is that relative speed matters so much in today's NFL with how spread out it is. And these offenses lack it to such extreme degrees. Sometimes it makes it look like the game is almost operating in slow motion or at 0.75 speed, because there's just nothing happening explosively. And I think the Colts are probably guilty of it more than the Titans even, because they can still get those generated, kind of fake 15-yard gains off of play action every once in a while from Ryan Tannehill. There is just not much of that at all in Indianapolis right now. And I don't know how you unlock what's going on with this team offensively.
Their most explosive playmaker in this game was a 6'6", 260-pound tight end.
Yes, a guy that I thought should probably be playing tackle when he was coming out of college, because I just didn't know how productive he'd be as a receiver.
He was their most explosive playmaker in this game. I thought their passing game actually looked okay near the end of the game. I thought that Matt Ryan actually played fine.
Yes.
The issue is everything else. You don't know what the Colts' rushing success rate in this game was?
I'm going to guess it was lower than 40%. Oh, God.
13.
You're going to break my heart. Oh, you're going to break my heart. Oh.
13.
You know what? That tracks
1.65 yards per carry.
that tracks, because I feel like I can remember the good runs that they had off the top of my head. I have like two in mind. They're like one shotgun run off of kind of like an RPO look that Jonathan Taylor was able to turn up the field. And I think they had one where Taylor basically had to break through 5 or 6 arm tackles to get like 8 yards.
It was awful. They could not run the ball in this game, and the pass protection got better near the end of the game, but there were still so many, 5 or 6 moments where you're sitting there being like, this is not okay. You just can't live like this. And it's everybody. I mean, Autry roasted Quentin Nelson for that strip sack in the first quarter, which isn't great. The left tackle is not viable.
No.
As things currently stand.
It was bad. It was
not
really
viable. They're already on right guard number 2. This one doesn't seem to be doing much better for them. And if they can't protect consistently and they can't run the ball and they have no juice on offense, and we have a quarterback that is clearly on the back half of his career, where are we at with this?
I mean, back half might be generous. There was a third quarter play action pass from Ryan, and he threw a sail route. And I watched him put so much of his body into that sail route that I thought his arm was going to come off with the ball. And it really wasn't even thrown all that hard either. I was like, oh man, this is where we're at with Ryan. this has the opportunity to be very unfun. Like I don't like this at all, especially if they can't run the ball and they can't find Alex Pierce one-on-one on the perimeter either. It's bad. It's really, really bad. Like this might be beyond worst case scenario for all the stuff that you, Nate, and I had talked about all off season.
I don't understand why getting Michael Pittman on the move, just trying to create some sort of yak opportunities for a team that doesn't have any vertical juice, and why we aren't seeing the elements of that within the offense. Nyheim Hines, I think, is your second best pass catcher. I have not seen him involved in any sort of receiving role of note over the last couple of weeks, which is truly bizarre to me. I just don't know where this team is at. It's so weird. And I don't want to spend all this time talking about the Colts because the Titans won the game, but it's not like the Titans were impressive in this game. They had 2 turnovers inside the Colts, like 35-yard line. They couldn't move the ball for most of the second half. They had a couple big splashy play action plays that screen to Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry had a couple big runs in this game. But these are bad teams. That right now, both of these are just bad teams, and the Titans got out to a big lead that they ultimately didn't relinquish. That's kind of what happened in this game.
I'm with you 100%. And, you know, when I think about all the different iterations of Frank Reich's offense in Indianapolis, right, you have Phillip Rivers, which is quick game galore, right? Screens and quicks all day long. And then maybe you get, you know, just enough intermediate passing to get you by at the end of a game. And then you have Carson Wentz, which was like the fakest of fake offense, RPO on almost every early down, or you're getting into heavy personnel and just handing it off to Jonathan Taylor to set up some play action stuff where you can try to get Wentz a design one-on-one vertically whenever that's possible. And now I'm looking at this version of the offense, and it's like, okay, well, you can't run the ball. They really don't have much yak opportunity within this offense, but for whatever reason, they haven't been able to manufacture it. I don't see many RPOs or anything like that in this offense, and I can understand if that's kind of a point of discomfort for Matt Ryan. But if that's the truth, well, then what the hell else are you supposed to do with this thing? Because you're not going to get vertical. Matt Ryan's arm doesn't really lend itself to pushing the ball down the field either. And I think that because of that, you can't mix up the kind of personnel groupings that they were even able to do last year with Wentz to try to, you know, generate some offense down the field when things were kind of humming in the middle of the season. This does not look like an offense that can catch that kind of hot streak again, where you're really able to move the ball and generate explosive runs, because I don't think that there's a threat of downfield passing, and certainly not enough of one, I think, to open up the door for Jonathan Taylor. And this offensive line can honestly not be trusted at all to be able to pass the ball down the field or really try to get guys moving vertically either. This is an offense that we just have to treat as a bad one until further notice. And a slow one, I think, is almost worse than being a bad one, because you can generate, you can kind of manufacture yardage for bad offenses. It's hard to do it for a slow offense and one that doesn't block very well.
I can't. My sorting tab on this chart is not working right now, but just doing some quick observation math. I want to say the Colts are either 26th or 27th in rushing EPA, which that's just not going to work.
Right.
It doesn't get any more complicated than that. If this team is currently constructed with Jonathan Taylor and the most expensive offensive line in the league is not going to be able to run the ball, then it just doesn't really matter. When we were trying to build an optimistic case for the Colts coming into the season, it was that Frank Reich has shown some really nice moments in play design, that Matt Ryan was potentially a better option to keep the train on the tracks because it was a well-designed, well-constructed train. The train is broken, so it doesn't really matter who's driving it right now. And so any case as to why the Colts would have been better with Matt Ryan was made with the assumption that the offense was ready-made for competent quarterback play. And that assumption was wrong based on the way the first 4 games of the season have gone.
I think that's perfect framing, that no matter what we thought or how this thing turned out, at the end of the day, this offense was built to use Jonathan Taylor in the offensive line as the central force of it. And that's not what this offense is. There was no contingency plan, because the only way this was ever going to work was if this offensive line and Jonathan Taylor led the way. And now that it's not, we are seeing all of the flaws of Matt Ryan in a way that I think that nobody in Indianapolis could have possibly saw coming, or definitely did not have a plan for. And the plan was that it just wasn't going to work then if they did not have what they needed to have on the ground. And that's what we're looking at right now.
The Titans are just a strange team. You know, they have guys I really like Jeffrey Simmons had his share of moments in this game. Danico Autry is a really good player. I just really like watching Danico Autry. He makes like 2 or 3 plays a game where it's like, you are a quickness issue for tackles or for guards at times, and you are a power issue for tackles at times. And that combination and what he can do with stunts. I mean, the biggest play they had today, a sack that torpedoed a drive near the end of the game when the Colts were driving to tie the game, is a stunt where the left tackle just can't handle him. And it's just one of those moments where the Colts offensive line, it's like, what is happening right now? So Autry and Simmons, I really like. I thought David Long had some really nice moments in this game, just play recognition and blowing shit up. But that's another one. It's just like, we're going to run a little fake end around swing to Michael Pittman that is read the entire way. He lets it sail over his head so he doesn't get blown up, which is the right move in that situation, because it would have been a 5-yard loss with him getting his head taken off if he had actually caught that ball. And they're figuring out things on the back end. They're just cycling through corners. And I like Christian Fulton. I think he's a nice piece moving forward. But what's happening at that other corner spot with the questions about Caleb Farley and everything else, and they're still figuring a lot of stuff out. This is a transition year for this Titans team. I think that they got a couple early turnovers in this game, and then they bled the clock out. That's what happened. The Colts ran out of time in this game, and that's my takeaway about the Titans. I'm not trying to be critical of them. They won the game, but it's hard to get excited about where the Tennessee Titans are in 2022, and I don't think that should surprise anyone. I think they'll probably be a competitive team because they've got some decent pieces, and I think for the most part they are well coached, but they're not good. They're not actively good, but the Colts are definitely not actively good either.
Right, I'm with you. And watching this Titans team as a West Coast kid, born and raised in San Diego, which means I saw the AFC West every Sunday. It is hard for me not to look at this Titans team and see the 2001 to 2006 Kansas City Chiefs with Priest Holmes and Larry Johnson. We're just we are trying to offense as little as we possibly can right now. What is the best way to gain exactly 5.5 yards as often as we can, so we do not have to do anything other than that? It's hard not to see him through that lens. I did see, there's still just enough juice from a Derrick Henry to be able to feed him a bit, especially when you're playing with the lead. So I was kind of happy to see that they could still control game script in that kind of way. I would like to see them try to lean into that as often as possible. I mean, this is a defense that forced a decent amount of turnovers last season and was able to create a lot of pass rush with their front four. Obviously, not having Landry hurts that. But I think that when you talk about an Autry, when you talk about Jeffrey Simmons and what they have up front, the more of that you can generate, that kind of leads me to believe that they will have some kind of foundational piece available to them with their front four as they continue to make this pivot. So Titans fans have a reason to feel good about that as you kind of look at what this offense is doing. But yeah, it looks so much like old school Priest Holmes, 21 personnel. We're just running ISO, just running lead. I saw something that made me almost shed a tear, which is Derrick Henry being tackled by a corner on duo, in the backfield. I was like, oh man, this is a really sobering reminder that this is not 2019 or 20 anymore. We're not in those days. There's a lot of tread on those tires now. While he can still be productive, you can definitely see a lot of the shine has come off of this offense, and it's definitely evident on the wide receiver room. All the back foot, AJ Brown breaking wide open on those 10 to 15 yard digs is out of this offense. And just not having that on its own, I don't think that we can overstate how much that just stripped away from what this team wants to be offensively.
Yeah, I think they're very much in figure it out mode right now. And I think that's probably going to continue for the next several weeks and probably for most of this season. So I really, really wish we didn't have to talk about the Colts anymore on any sort of platform this week, but they play on Thursday night against the Broncos. So
it is October of 2022, and the only AFC South team I care about is the Jacksonville Jaguars. What the hell is wrong with the NFL?
That's where we are. That is absolutely where we are. All right, guys, thank you very much for coming and spending the afternoon with us. Please, if you could, and you have not already, subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can do that on YouTube. If you're watching it here, you can do that by looking in the podcast description, seeing the YouTube link in that text. Give it a click, give us a subscribe. We are doing multiple shows a week on the YouTube channel. We're doing this show live every Monday. We're doing our weekly preview show with me, Nate, and Diante every Thursday. Obviously, our Sunday night recap show is one that we do live on YouTube. Nate's Wind the Clock is on YouTube every single week. We're rolling out a lot more video content all season. So please, if you have not subscribed, please do that. Also, could you leave us a rating if you like the podcast? Leave us a review. Tell us why you like it. We've been slacking a little bit over there. If you like the show, just go leave us a rating. It'll take 2 minutes. Just go do it right now. If you've been a habitual listener to the show for a while and you like what you hear, I would sincerely appreciate that. I really, really would. We will be back on Wednesday. Until then, appreciate you guys listening. We'll talk to you soon.